Welcome to Talking Pictures Trivia as we venture into our sub-series Talking TV Trivia. When there's a TV show that catches our attention, this podcast picks a season and explores each episode through trivia. I'm today's host, Nick, and with me is...
Tom.
KJ.
And I'm Chris.
Chris has once again graciously volunteered to join us as a guest for this entire TV show season. We only had to say it was related to Star Wars, and he was still in. For those joining us for the first time, we start off each episode with 4 trivia questions to determine who will earn today's trivia crown. Then we follow it up with our theme discussion associated with the TV episode, in this case involving season 1 of Disney's The Mandalorian. KJ, tell us about today's TV episode.
Today we'll be discussing episode 2 of The Mandalorian, also known as Chapter 2, The Child. This episode was directed by Rick Famuyiwa and written by Jon Favreau. There will be spoilers for The Mandalorian up through episode 2, so feel free to pause until you are caught up. In chapter 2 of The Mandalorian has found his ship ransacked by Jawas. We spend this episode on a side quest of the Mandalorian getting his ship back together by trading his services to retrieve an egg. The Mandalorian also finds out that his meme has more power than expected when the child picks up a woolly mammoth with his mind. We end the episode with a repaired ship, and our journey continues.
Each question, the points are equal to the number of the question. So let's start it off.
It's time for question 1.
What is the species of the bounty hunters that try to take the child?
Locked in.
Which ones? It's like 80 of them. Like,
Episode 2.
Oh, okay. I have no idea. That doesn't help at all.
The good news is it's only 1 point.
Lock in.
I'm trying to remember this. So,
Beginning of the episode, he's walking down, I guess, a valley in the rocks, and he's ambushed by these bounty hunters.
oh, geez. Yeah, I guess locked in. I don't remember this at all.
Okay,
I remember this.
I will give a clue, which I thought might actually make this answerable to everyone, but I'm wrong. There was a famous bounty hunter of the same species in the original trilogy.
That kind of rings a bell, but I don't know what species it is. I mean, I locked in something.
Okay, I'll just move on.
I'll update my locked in on that information.
Okay. KJ, what is the updated lock-in?
The updated lock-in, well, so IG-11 is, I think he's in the original trilogy, but I don't think he's in this episode. But whatever Greedo is, I don't know. He's the only other famous
Are you
bounty.
referring to a Rhodian? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, a Rhodian, yes.
Okay.
Greedo.
Tom.
I was going to say the Utah Pigman of the Great West.
Close. Chris.
They are Transdoshan.
They are definitely Trandoshans, just like Bosk from the original trilogy. It's one of those scenes with the famous bounty hunters. The one in the original trilogy, KG, was actually IG-88, which looked very similar to IG-11. Huh. So I thought there was a chance that you guys might have known Bosk. So he was kind of a fan favorite.
Who's Bosk?
The Trandoshan bounty hunter.
Oh, well.
He's in one of those scenes where Darth Vader tells Boba Fett no disintegrations. That fame. He's one of those IG-88 and Bosk, and there's a
like
whole
people...
series of
He looks like a big walking lizard.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So those
He's a fan favorite.
Yeah, like there was like a cult classic type thing. Those who didn't like the Fett Man, like Bosk.
I think that scene is just like a cult classic with all the bounty hunters on the balcony kind of thing. Like that's just a iconic scene.
Yeah.
A Transdoshan.
Trandoshan.
I don't know why. That sounds very clean. Right? That sounds very soothing.
They're actually their race is very big on hunting and all that. So they're kind of bred for that. So in fact, they're known for hunting Wookiees. So it's one of those deals.
Sounds like a brand of jacuzzi, right?
Ooh, you have a Trandoshan?
I'm not following along here. So I'm going to move on to question 2.
It's time for question 2.
This is more of a statement than a question. So answer it either way. Name the Mandalorian's weapon of choice in this episode.
Oh, locked in.
Locked in.
So we don't do plot summaries before this, but this is the one with the Jawas and the Mudhorn, right?
You did literally the plot summary of this episode.
And my jokes come back to haunt me. All right, locked in.
Mhm.
I gotta start with KJ.
All right, so my joke answer is the knife. My real answer is the wrist fire, flame, yoga flame.
Okay. Tom
I'm gonna say the disintegrating gun.
and Chris.
I think it's called a phase pulse blaster.
Okay. So the points are going to go to Tom and Chris. It is an Amban phase pulse blaster, also known as an Amban sniper rifle. And yes, that is the gun that does have the disintegration rounds, Tom. So you're on board there.
All
KJ,
right.
you were also referring to a vibro blade. And he does use the flamethrower a lot in this series, but I wouldn't say that was the one he utilized the most in this episode. There were a lot of Jawas that just kind of vanished, which was awesome, by the way. Poof.
It seemed like he used the blaster more, but the one shot aspect of this gun made it more, you couldn't use it all the time.
It's time for question 3.
When is the first time we see the Force being used?
Oh, locked in.
Yeah, locked in.
Locked in. So for pub trivia, right? People, there's usually a quiz master guy, and he may have the trivia wrong, but you got to give him the answer he wants, not a real answer. So the first time, and I want to make sure I understand the scope. This is this episode, right? Not this series.
This episode?
Okay.
And possibly this series.
Well, and
Yeah.
that's where I think I'm gonna. Okay, so when
But the answer is within this episode.
okay,
If that
when
helps.
the Mudhorn is lifted. Yeah, I'm locked in with that.
It's kind of a trick question because it's when the Mudhorn is lifted, but you see Yoda attempting to heal a cut he has, or Baby Yoda, or whatever the little
The
thing.
child.
The child, sure, attempting to heal a cut, but it's unclear whether actually any force actually is used. It looks like an attempt, so I'm going to cheat and say that's the first attempt, but the first demonstrative usage is the lifting of the horn.
Yeah, Tom has exactly what my answer is. That the little child tries to heal the Mando's wounds from the Trandoshan fight, but I don't know that he's successful because the Mandalorian keeps picking him up and putting him back in the pram. But you definitely see the Force being used, as the question says, when he lifts the woolly mammoth. I think was in our review.
Well, I'm happy to say that everyone is going to get the points on this one. It was a bit of a trick question. I've had debates with some other people, or maybe you guys even, I'm not even sure, of when the first time was, and he was not successful in that attempt. The first time we actually see a successful attempt is the lifting of the Mudhorn, aka KJ's woolly mammoth. So congrats to all. You navigated around what I thought was supposed to be a trick question. So good job.
It's time for question 4.
How do the Jawas insult the Mandalorian?
Oh, locked in.
That was a confident Tom lock in
I
there.
remember that.
Locked in.
I'm gonna say locked in.
I like KJ's answer, so I'm going to keep going with KJ.
So if I remember the scene correctly, it's when the Mandalorian comes back with Nick Nolte and they're hanging out with the Jawas, and the Jawas and the Mandalorian says, "Those are my parts," and the Jawas kind of laugh at him like, "Yeah, no, I mean we have them." So the insult is we have. The insult is the joke about whose parts they actually are right now.
Okay. Tom?
He tries to speak to them and they say, "Your Jawa is terrible. You sound like a Wookiee."
Chris?
Yep, that was my locked in answer. He sounds like a
Oh, I thought Tom might have been able to sneak a win in here. There looked like there was some thought process going on with Chris for our audio audience there. But
It took a couple seconds.
Yeah. So it does look like Chris is victorious again with a clean slate here with 10 points. Tom came pretty darn close with 9 points, and KJ was on the board with 3. So the episode is going to go to Chris, but that was a good one for everyone. And the reality is my bonus question would have been a waste anyway, because I was going to ask the name of the weapon used to kill the Mudhorn, but it kind of came up in conversation, so I thought it was worth sharing that was a vibro blade.
Yeah, so that kills that thing? It looked like
It's a
dinner
pretty
utensil.
powerful weapon.
Does it come up elsewhere in Star Wars?
It does exist. Vibro blades do exist, and apparently they can cut through lots of things. Like they're very, very strong. It's like a vibrating blade, so I think it almost think of it as if it had like a sawing motion. The only thing in that scene, I don't know how it continued to protrude deeper into that animal, but it's Star Wars.
Yeah, there you go.
We don't know the size of that animal's brain, where it resides. Or
were they called Ginsu blades? Remember those things? They used to sell them on television, cutting pennies. That's what I was thinking.
They're the next evolution, except that they vibrated.
Oh, okay.
They show up in the movies. The Gamorrean guards, the big green pig people in Jabba the Hutt palace, like their axes are supposed to be vibro blades as well. Like that's one of the only canon times you see it in the movies, though.
Okay.
And they don't have the same special effects of vibrating. So, okay, back to back. Congrats to Chris, our winner for this episode.
Yeah.
I did want to dive into a related topic that came up when I was watching this. It's the theory of lone wolf and cub. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with that material, but it's pretty much the story we see the plot line over and over of a seasoned outcast having to take care of a young one. But we'll explore that a little bit further when we're back from our quick break.
Hi, this is Kaitan from Lightsaber Duck Removal. We here at LSDR have recently been bought out by the Duck Star, a really interesting company that staffs Imperial warships and even TIE fighters with talented and eager ducks. LSDR's ducks are trained to operate the navigation systems of Imperial Star Destroyers, both Class 1 and 2, are trained in warp speed installation and repair, tractor beam operations and maintenance, Empire Shuttle luxury service, TIE fighter maneuvers, and even Death Star actuarial and accounting assistance. So contact LSDR or Duck Star Corp for all your staffing needs. Fully certified ducks are ready to start today.
And we're back. I mentioned before we left, this episode made me think of a theme we see in a lot of different movies of this outcast with taking care of a younger child or something of that matter. And one of the things that I was reading about that this referenced a lot was a manga actually called Lone Wolf and Cub, which was later turned into a series of movies. I cannot say that I'm familiar with the source material, but I did a little research on this. But it's the same thing where a formidable warrior and master swordsman is outcasted from a powerful position. And again, I don't have all the details here, and has to take his young child with him on the road to fight for hire along the way. So, I mean, a direct correlation to what we have here. And we do see this in other movies. So I just thought it'd be fun to explore that further. And then, of course, really talk about anything we enjoyed or wanted to bring up that was relevant about this episode.
Yeah, it's a good subgenre, right? Because it allows this kind of you see the manifestation of the parental figure, right, who has to kind of protect the child, and as a consequence, or protect the smaller, weaker thing, and as a consequence becomes even more dangerous to the outside world, right? That his world becomes all the more smaller because he has to keep guard against this child. And what's interesting, this shift or change that the Mandalorian brings to this seems to be, and I don't know this genre well enough to say if this is not manifesting anywhere else. But the change here seems to be that the Mandalorian is part of this very traditional unit, right? The Mandalores. And there's a way of doing things that go back to time immemorium, or maybe something you guys know better than me. But there's this kind of traditional unit, and the idea of having to adopt both a kind of parental role in protecting Baby Yoda, and also sort of seeing himself in the child, because he had this kind of foundling experience where his parents were killed and he was left astray. He kind of sees himself in the child, and sort of for that reason, for his own personal history, ends up taking on the role of the warrior in the relationship of the warrior and the cub, and therefore has to violate this kind of traditional structure that has given his life not only meaning, but has offered him protection when he was a foundling. And so there's an interesting irony built into the show in that way.
Not yet.
What?
Not
Oh
yet.
no. What? But he, at the end of episode 2, he rescues him, right? He doesn't? Oh, son of a bitch.
Well,
Yeah.
he thinks about doing it, maybe in the future.
How does this one end?
He just
Sorry.
gets his ship parts back. Or no, he actually gets his
Oh
ship back.
no, that's right.
I like this idea of it being the like the protector and the cub, or the protector and the young one. And I think that you can see a shift. Like in this episode 2, it's all about asset. Like he's protecting the child because it's an asset. But I feel like as we progress further into the series, that dynamic might change, and it might become more of a parental figure as opposed to anything else. And I really like that this episode is really great. I think it's got some comedic value to it with the Jawa stuff. I like that you get to see the Mandalorian not be the superhero, that he gets beat around, that the Mudhorn is about to kill him. He's literally willing to die a warrior's death. He holds up his little knife, the vibro blade, and he's ready to let this guy impale him, but he's going to go down fighting. And then it isn't until the child gets involved that we actually get a finale that we want. But I just think it's really good that, he's not a superhero. He's not Luke Skywalker. He doesn't have the Force. He's just a dude trying to fight his way through the galaxy, and he is not necessarily up to the job at all the times. And I thought that was good. It also shows you might be able to see growth in the character if you start off at the bottom and you find your way progressing further into the future.
You're spot on. He got his bounty. He comes back. His ship is ripped apart. He tries to get the Jawas. He gets knocked off a sandcrawler, which I think would probably knock the wind out of you. I don't care how strong Beskar steel is. I don't think it's that absorbent, but that's just my thoughts on that. And then he gets beat up to the point where, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, his armor loses its integrity, let's just say. So, yeah, he is definitely flawed, and not necessarily as a human being, but they're showing that connection that he is not.
Child
immortal.
introduces the mystery into the show, right? Well, once the child kind of raises his hand, and we know what the Force is as people who, who were born after Star Wars was made, and it's kind of clear this is a descent. This is somehow related to Yoda, because it looks like Yoda, and it can use the Force in an extraordinary way. But it introduces that element of mystery. And what ends up happening with the Mandalore, once he sees the rhinoceros creature lift into the air, suddenly his world it's not undone, but he notices the borders of his own experience, right? Because he doesn't understand this. He doesn't get what is happening in front of his face. And so the child becomes not only something he's clearly sympathetic towards. I mean, the end of the first episode, he kills the robot to stop the robot from killing the child. Now that could be he can make more money by bringing the child back alive, but you also get the sense that he's sympathetic to a child's life. But here we're moving past that and seeing that there's this kind of element of boundary expansion that has to happen. Right, it isn't happening yet in this episode, but it's going to have to, because now he's met a limit on his experience.
But what's also interesting about when the Mandalorian witnesses the child lift the mud horn. We know more about the Force than he does. He's shocked and awed. Like, this is nothing. He's seen a lot of things, let me tell you, I'm sure, through his different travels and bounties. This catches him completely off guard, it seems.
Yeah, we know Star Wars through the movies with Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, and the forces throughout all of them. They're the wizards of the universe. But for a regular person living on a backwater planet, like, the Force is a fairy tale. It's like King Arthur pulling the sword out of the stone. Like, you've never seen that before. You just assume that it's a fantasy. And then he sees it for the first time in real life, in action, and it's as if magic is real. It's that, like, realization. And you're absolutely right. He is going to grow as he goes further, and I think you're going to see that kind of change his character as you progress through the season.
Where we see that in the original trilogy is definitely Han Solo, because he's like, oh yeah, that's just all talk, I forget. Oh gosh, how could I not remember the quote with the trusty blaster at his side? That's his religion.
Yeah, it's a dramatic irony, right? We know more than the characters.
So, how far are we from the fall of the Republic? The old Republic.
35 years, right?
35 years. How old do we think the Mandalorian is? Roughly 30 years old?
Yeah, somewhere mid 30s.
In other words, do we think he was around during the Clone Wars?
I do think he was around during the Clone Wars.
Okay. So he was, I don't know, a child when there were Jedi everywhere. I don't understand how this universe forgot about the Force so
it's propaganda. The Empire made you forget.
Yes.
So it's basically the Emperor knew the Jedi were around, and he made a propaganda machine to, like, basically erase the existence of Jedi. He goes around and collects all the artifacts. There's lots of stories of Darth Vader going and finding lightsabers and different Jedi and Sith artifacts and hoarding them, taking them away, basically kind of locking up art and like, kind of like when in World War II they were taking away and hiding all of the art pieces.
Yes.
Palpatine was doing all that. He was taking away all of the Jedi lore so that people would literally forget. Like, he was rewriting the textbooks so that, people wouldn't know that they existed. And when it was just kind of like hearsay, like, oh, I'm old enough that I remember Jedi. It's like, oh no, you're just an old fool. Like, he was literally trying to make it that way, because to everybody else, Palpatine was just like, any world leader, any president, any prime minister. But it was only to us as the viewer of the movie that we realized how evil his propaganda was.
Yeah, they reference that in some other books and other media, not too long after we know the fall of the end of the Clone Wars. Let's put it that way, and they're already myth. Like, they're all like, "What are you talking about, Jedi?" It's like again, fairy tales. So I mean, I'd say 10 plus years. It wasn't that long.
And it was one of those things that, like, if you came out against the Empire's propaganda, you'd be murdered. So a lot of people that knew about them were mum about them and didn't talk about them. And then once everything had changed and you get a new generation come through, the Jedi are gone.
That is a very successful propaganda machine.
He was very good at
He's very good at whatever that is. Yeah.
No. His plans for all this stuff was way before even the Clone Wars. I mean, he really has secret laboratories all over the galaxy. There's a lot of levels of preparation that Palpatine took in many different avenues.
Edward Bernays has nothing on him.
Our fans will love that reference.
Sorry. Edward Bernays was the nephew of Freud, and he wrote he worked in advertisement, and he wrote a very famous book on propaganda. Which, if you're an Audible Plus member, you can get for free now on Audible.
Tom, they don't sponsor us.
But they should.
Just use the code at Talking Studios for a 0% discount.
They may charge you more, actually.
I just love Jawas. I love this. I love the egg. I thought the whole thing was great. Like, send this guy on a dastardly mission that almost kills him for an egg, and it's nothing. Like, I was like, oh, they're gonna crack it open. There's gonna be like an oyster. There's gonna be a diamond inside. No, they just wanted to cut the top of it and stick their disgusting hands in it and just start pulling out yolk. It was
a delicacy. That's all it was.
It was an awesome sight. Like the Jawas were like, they had no regard for his life. They were like, yeah, go get this egg. Yeah, we'll give you some stuff back if you get this egg. And then that's great.
It also makes
really
you realize
was.
how like cheap engine stuff is, right? It's like, we'll give you all that back for like an egg, for this delicacy.
I think it's the way things are valued. Just like we were saying before, how rare Beskar steel is. They probably would never have been able to get this egg, and now they have it. So money is relative, right? Or like value is relative. So that experience. They will live the rest of their life remembering that experience, the time they had that furry egg yolk.
Yeah, but it's based on scarcity. And it's an interesting world, the Star Wars world, because it seems like most technology isn't really that good, except space travel and like blasting people, and even the blasters are considerably slower than bullets. And so it's just interesting how like the engines that get people from place to place just aren't that valuable. They're kind of cheap.
Well, that's just a plot device. And even when you break it down throughout various Star Wars stories, the amount of time it takes to go in light speed is exactly as much time as they need to tell the story. And that's just like,
that's
in
fine.
Star Wars, that's
yeah.
accepted. That's just straight up accepted.
Yeah, but that's fine. You need
Yeah.
ways of getting from place to place.
Definitely.
Without the spice.
Check out our website, talkingpicturestrivia.com, for more information about us and our episodes. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as our YouTube channel. We are extremely grateful for any positive reviews, as those help others like you find us. If you like what you hear, remember to like and subscribe to our show. Do you feel more like a lone wolf or a cub, and why? Leave a comment on our YouTube channel and let's continue the conversation. Chris, it was great having you on today. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's always a good time to talk about Star Wars. Thank you very much for having me again.
How about we do this again next week?
I think that sounds like a great idea.
Okay. Additionally, you can follow us on Twitter at Talking Studios. Where can they find the rest of you guys?
You can find me on Twitter at ThomasLehman15.
And you can find me on Twitter at KJ10001000.
I can also be found on Twitter at The Nicknamed. Join us next time when we continue The Mandalorian with Chapter 3, The Sin. Talk to you then.